I'm honoured to welcome Kazim Ali this evening. Kazim Ali was born in the United Kingdom and raised in Canada and the United States, and has lived transnationally in India, France, and the Middle East. He's the author of 25 books of poetry, fiction, non-fiction, and translations, as well as the editor of 5 anthologies. Kazim also co-founded the small press Nightboat Books and served as its first publisher, and it's still going strong, and he's still editing for Nightboat. Kazim's work has been awarded and nominated for many awards, and most recently he won the Banff Mountain Book Award for Environmental Literature and was a finalist for the Lambda Literary Award for LGBTQ Nonfiction, both for Northern Light, Power, Land, and the Memory of Water. Kazim is also a certified yoga instructor and teaches yoga and trains yoga teachers, has done in Ramallah, Palestine for many years. And I believe that, like Garth, he's also a dancer. I looked online and I found that he's a former member of the Sukun Theatre Modern Dance Company. Yes. Kazim is currently professor and chair of the Department of Literature at the University of California, San Diego, and his new collection, Sukun, is a collection of the best poetry across his nearly 20-year career. And I'd love to welcome Kazim Ali.
Hi, everybody. How are you guys doing? It's nice to be here with you at the edge of the continent, looking out towards the endless horizon, not on this side of the island, but somewhere on the island, you can look out towards the water, the endless water. I made a little, I thought, of quite witty reference earlier at the reading earlier today about being a firebender in the water tribe, and nobody really got it. So this is the room for it, though, right? Yeah, I am a firebender, but I'm a merciful master. So anyways, I thought earlier today I decided to theme my reading on water, and so all the poems I read had water in them. And someone said, oh, it was that's amazing that you could just read poems about water. And I said to that person, I said, well, there's so many more. I mean, I could have chosen any number of poems about water. So I set a challenge for myself to do it again, to read poems only that have water in them or are informed by water, but not any of the ones that I read earlier. So let's see how this goes. This is a poem called Sleep Door. A light knocking on the sleep door, like the sound of a rope striking the side of a boat, heard underwater. Boats pulling up alongside each other. Beneath the surface, we rub up against each other. Will we capsize in the surge and silence of waking from sleep? You are a lost canoe navigating by me. I am the star map tonight. All the failed echoes don't matter. The painted over murals don't matter. You can find your way to me by the faint star lamp. We are a fleet now, our prows zeroing in, praying in the wind to spin like haywire compasses toward whichever direction will have us. So yeah, that's supposed to be kind of sexy. So if you were picking up on that, then yes. Naval missive. Will I ever dare to pray for something real, or will I stay at the sill, looking out, wanting to know who is it that is looking back? I write whole archives into letters, folded into paper boats, dropped into the stream at midnight, drifting now somewhere between map and maelstrom. Should I ask for my thirst to be quenched, or for unquenchable thirst? My favorite character in Moby Dick. Everyone has one. I mean, if you've read the book, that is, everyone has a favorite character. It's usually not Ishmael. He's kind of like the eye of the hurricane. And Ahab's too easy to say, so you probably exclude them, and whoever was your favorite character besides them would probably tell a lot about you, you know, like, do you love Queequeg? Do you love Tashtego? You know, Fadala, there's all these really super interesting characters in that book. Starbuck, of course, poor Starbuck, poor dear, deeply committed Starbuck, who, despite his pretensions to fulfilling a life of self-reflection and social justice, at the one moment it really counts, he cannot act in moral justice. He fails. He's the villain of that story, actually. Everyone dies because of Starbuck. At any rate, my favorite character in that book is Pip, the cabin boy. And Pip gets flipped over. He insists on going along on the whale boat, and he panics and gets flipped over the side of the boat. The first time it happens, they stop chasing the whale and rescue him. And then it happens again, and they just throw the life preserver over the edge, which is a barrel that has been tarred shut, and it's hollow, so it's sealed, and he has to hold on to it. And they take off after the whale, and he has to hold on to it and wait for them to come back. And so if you read the book, what happens is they catch the whale, and in the midst of the celebration and dragging the whale back to the whaling boat, they forget about him. And it's not until the next morning where they realize, like, where's Pip? And they have to go back and forth to find Pip. And of course, that mirrors the action at the end of the book when, spoiler alert, when one of the ships has to rescue someone else. I won't give away the ending, but I think you know it. At any rate, by the time Pip is found, he has been driven mad. And it's a beautiful chapter in which Melville describes his madness. He's been driven mad because he's seen eternity, the endless horizon for 24 hours. He sees the face of God, basically, as Melville describes it. So my poem Pip is like, it's like 20 words long, basically. So sorry that I explained all of that to you. Consider it a miniature lecture on comparative theologies in Moby Dick. Ahab and Starbuck are Quakers. Pip the cabin boy is Black, and he is of undescribed spiritual leanings. But he seems to me, in that chapter where it's described his visions, it seems to me he's quite pagan, little Pip. Pip, he slips between the pages into depth. Is this what was written on the body's blank? Who you are praying to is perhaps a castaway. God, lost in publication, unfinished. The boats now mount their horizonward search. I do not want to be drowned or to be lost. Rather, in blue smoke, I wish it was a sound of oars working. I heard the sound of my name being called. Yeah. So water abounds, and I can't escape it. I read some poems about Icarus earlier today, and I am going to read an Icarus poem later, but before I do that, I want to read there's a long sequence in the middle of this book called Ocean Street. It's an 8-part poem, and I just want to read two sections from it. And it's a poem that I wrote while listening to the music of Alice Coltrane, who was a student of Hindu Vedanta and a devotee first of Swami Satchidananda and then later of Sai Baba. So some of that, and when I was writing this poem, I was informed by that spirituality. And I wrote it in 2007 in Santa Cruz, California, on the cliff looking over the ocean. So it's also a poem of water. Blue or white or very far away, every avenue, a rain-stroked aisle through the wild wind's theater. Far to the bark, floating in the last row, yourself laddered to an avenue of sound. Last streak of white gold found in lines along the branches or in the branches, or are you a branch that tries from the bark to speak? Cold roar of the ocean, you cannot speak. How loud the blue-gray morning, how loud when you dissolved yourself into sound, when you dissolved April into the soul's endless question. What was your body but a first uncertain answer? So Alice Coltrane became really, really important to me because I came to learn as I listened to more and more of her music. She had a very important album to me called Universal Consciousness. And I came to discover when I read the album liner notes, that is a historical artifact, the art of the liner note, the album liner note. When I read the album liner notes, I came to discover that the album was recorded live and it was improvised. So it was just in performance created. And it was created on the afternoon in New York. It was created at a recording studio in New York City on the afternoon of April 6th, 1971. And what I later learned was, so Alice Coltrane had another guru in music, and that was Igor Stravinsky. And she talked in one of the liner notes to her later album journey in Satchidananda, it's a beautiful album. She talked about how she was quite mystical and unapologetically so. So she talked about how Igor Stravinsky's ghost would come to her at night and stand at the foot of her bed and dictate music to her. And she kept a music notebook next to her bed so she could quickly pull it over and write the pieces, notate the pieces that Stravinsky was dictating to her. And so those are the pieces in that album. So I recommend listening to it, especially if you like Stravinsky. And so I came to learn that Igor Stravinsky died in New York also, some point between the hours of 5 and 7 in the morning. And it's based on the nurse went at some point before and some point after, so they know the window where he died. That same morning, April 6th, 1971. And while Stravinsky was dying, I was being born in London on April 6th, 1971. So I felt like Alice Coltrane's music was like, I'm unclear that whether she knew or not that Stravinsky had died that morning. I'm fairly sure she did not know that I was being born. But one never knows. And she did indeed have magical powers. So anyways, let me read another poem from the sequence. And you'll know, you won't notice that I'm only reading 2 poems from the sequence, but there are surfers that kind of run through the whole poem, and they surf in the poem. And I worry about them because they're surfing against cliffs. So actually in Santa Cruz, there's a memorial, there's a statue of a surfer, and it's the memorial to all the people who have been killed on those cliffs, chasing the perfect wave. So this is another poem from the sequence. And the surfers are referred to in it. Every aisle a rain-stroked avenue, breathlessly quoted a letter in space of the sea's blue promise. Each spring I lie on the surface, hoping one day to stand aloft. My shirt crumpled in front of the empty-hearted tree, one sleeve pointing the way to nowhere beach, wantonly disappearing every day, though I did not believe when with your breath you made a bridge and dreamed myself wrong, my strange and weary road, my unkempt figure, my blue whisper, winter god whose center in the moment, unwilling to be warm, eternal the winter, eternal the wind, unmaking your will and whisper, my anger, my lantern, my spaceless wick. But how, my tenuous prayer board, can a supplicant balancing on the surface know anything about depth? I think I should read one last poem from this cycle, the last poem in it, just to finish it up. A body slides through the water, cleanly angling for rocky shore. Eternal, internal zephyr. Men have dashed themselves to death to feel the racing thrill. How do you pronounce year after year home or death? The ocean avenue, a bridge ready to collapse, pond evaporates to air, your breath made a bridge to collapse, ready to collapse, your breath made a bridge, impatient penitence, race for the exit, lean close, saint everyone. I live neither here nor there, the ocean scrambling itself to answer, sketching you in pieces everywhere in an odd scene, paddling against the current, straining for shore. You drew yourself in time, a backwards sign, surfing in on the breath, wishing not to be an echo of the ocean, but its escalation. And when I cast myself across the surface, I did stop wondering, would I float or would I drown? Yes, I love to hear that little groan of pleasure. It's just the most beautiful thing. And I love secretly also that I made you do that. He's dirty little bird, dirty and flirty. Yeah. Okay, wow, here we go. We're halfway through. Maybe a little more than halfway through. We'll see if you behave. Water. Oh, okay. So let me go off water for a second since we're halfway through. I might as well, because I brought in Zephyr. I mentioned Zephyr, the wind, you know, the spring, the warm spring wind, little Zephyr. And as the story goes, in ancient times, there was a beautiful young man named Hyacinth. And it was a love triangle, you see, because Apollo, the sun, loved him, but so did Zephyr, the spring wind. And Hyacinth chose Apollo. And poor Zephyr was a jealous lover, and he saw them on slopes of a mountain playing discus, throwing the discus. It might have been a euphemism, or I wasn't there, but it's possible that it was a euphemism, possible they were just throwing the discus. And Zephyr, in a rage, gusted, blew the wind and caused the discus to strike Hyacinth in the head, and the boy fell down dying. And of course, Zephyr was immediately remorseful, and so he swoops down, and he and Apollo, the sun and the wind, collaborated to transform Hyacinth into a flower, which is the flower hyacinth. That's the origin story for the flower hyacinth. So I started thinking a lot about being a young gay man, and all of we already talked about my checkered past earlier at dinner. But anyway, so this is a letter to Zephyr from the once boy Hyacinth. Unhook each point from the silver-backed sky. Unfasten the buttons of my winter jacket and unpetal me. Dear fickle once-a-year wonder, you reach for me even now, but know that my stem wanders lightward, even as your gusts thrust through the soil into me. Rage in your comely way, but know you arrived each year on his heels, that yellow, timeless fire starter who shone madly on me even in the cold months. Perhaps I lack vision, lying with the wonder that arrived first, but I thought only to master my mother's ken. Take comfort, at least, that I know it was your roughness that invented me, made beautiful my ruin. More than merely warm me, you murdered me into music. You killed my fearful youth and brought me to flower. So we should return to water. Water, the endless horizon. I was going to read to you from Sheila Chandra, but there is some water in Sheila Chandra, isn't there? But I'll find some. Okay, there's water in the very first poem of Sheila Chandra. There's water in it because I mentioned that the fountain Zamzam, which is the spring in Mecca, it sprung up there because that is in the myth. It's the spring that sprung up to feed Ishmael in the story of Hagar and Ishmael. So Zamzam is mentioned at the close of this poem. This is the opening poem of the sequence, The Voice of Sheila Chandra, and it borrows from the structures of Indian music. Breaks is constant, was like the river, light on the river, riven that remained a rift, an old rill that sounded, she merged with the vibration of the drum, a hum, a home, womb and she moaned in the loam, dark earth, come, Sheila, dame, ocean, dome, this poem, Rome to tome, tomb, foam, original fountain that fed my mum, Zamzam, when I was born. It had lots of water in it. It had a river, it had an ocean. Lots of water. What represses, unhomes in the sound? Who has made me? What is made me? Is a voice just muscles and shape and breath to phrase a song? Boats assemble at the mouth of the harbor, mouth in earth. You who wrote an ode to silence never wrote of what is silenced. I did seek all resounding caves. Let the voice be lit, all the lanterns in the new world. We need the language of stone from string to string, quiver in the opening, the garden so beautiful, Lucifer dark, son of morning, no Eden, but innocence, no expulsion, but after. And I think I will close with two more poems, both of them in water. I like a theme, you see. Now, if I was going to reach you for a long more time, I do have a poem in here which is set in Kerala, which is also a province in India full of water. And it is called The Unlikely Event of a Water Landing, which always, I don't know, it doesn't reassure me. It sort of panics me when the flight attendants say, while it is unlikely in the event of a water landing, it's sort of like, and you're flying from like, San Diego to Denver. It's like things have to go very wrong for there to be a water landing. So that poem is in here for your pleasure. It's a quite a long poem. It takes about 15 minutes to read. And then there's another poem in here I really want you to read that is called Orca Oracle, which I did write before the orcas started their intifada. And started to sink the boats, etc. But that too is quite a long poem. So instead, I'm going to read you two short poems, and they're very different from each other. One of them is like a very musical and lyrical evocation of the San Diego neighborhood where I live in, which is San Diego is a town built in hills and canyons, and so there are heights. So there are neighborhoods that are called such and such heights, such and such heights. And my neighborhood, because there was a state normal school there in the early days of the 20th century, is called Normal Heights. And the reason it's funny is because it's the kind of alternative neighborhood of San Diego. And so it's all where all the freaks and geeks live. And so they've created t-shirts that say Abnormal Heights. And that's its nickname in the city of San Diego. So anyways, this poem is it's surrounded by canyons. So the coyotes come into the neighborhood. So if you live in Normal Heights and you have a cat, they have to be indoor cats, because if they're not indoor cats, you'll like go out in the garden one morning and there'll be like a tail in the garden, but like nothing else of the cat. So anyways, so this yeah, I know. And so this poem is called it's a love letter to my neighborhood, and it's called Petrichor Lecture. And Petrichor, there's a series of poems in the book that are something lecture. Petrichor, of course, is that beautiful smell of dirt and rain and earth and water. Petrichor Lecture. Ain't I on the afternoon wan rain pouring in this ember? San Diego hand over, the reading in hand, then routes racing to say what fortunate when rain can say. Petrichorus, Petrichorus, lector on Petra, pale through rain in the desert. Does earth petrol rain prickling my skin in the morn trickle? December trails, years end petrol withdrawal. Futures end red in the haptic drifts happening. I'm umbral on board, fated to fade in rain, untraveled, untrammeled, uncastled, rook or a king. Rooks sing Petra choral, morning in Normal Heights. Rain on the ground or in the air, and air not raveling, but in strands or points. Noted, railing, wren arrive, rooks and wrens bend in air in course, weave in waves, the earth enters air, querent through rain and swears. Petrichor, Petrichoros, pretty and sore, the air clears and wavers, the sun sayer airs and wears. The chorus, chorus, core, key, queer, core, care. And then the final poem that I'll read to you. Thank you so much for listening to me. It's been a pleasure being with you. I read earlier today, I read a full sequence about Icarus. And it took Icarus from leaving the labyrinth, escaping. He disobeys his father, so he's kind of the patron saint of queer sons, I guess. And I don't let him drown. I sort of rescue him by the end of the sequence. And then I left him, and I published that book in 2013. So in 2021, I turned 50, and Icarus started haunting me again a little bit. And I wrote this poem, it's called Icarus Turns 50. And it's the notion that he survived, but that's not all. The earlier poems, and you've heard my earlier poems, so you know I'm excited about music, I'm excited about lyricism and ecstasy and all of those things. And I thought, what if Icarus at 50 was very ordinary? You know, what if all that was enough for him and he just wanted to live an average life? It seems that's probably what would happen if you had such an adventure. And so the poem is ordinary, and it on purpose, it ends in an insignificant way. Icarus turns 50. Crudité and crackers. That's how my myth starts. I'm slicing cucumbers when the phone rings with that ominous tone of a call you were not expecting. And I think, it's happened. He's gone, and I wasn't there. And then over the line comes his voice, alive and unbothered, same as it always was, maybe a tiny bit more gravelly. He says, Beta, and haven't I imagined this moment 108 times before? Once for each turn in that Minoan maze, once for each feather individually affixed to my back. Sometimes in my imaginings, I am silent and wait for him to speak. Sometimes I hang up on him. Sometimes I am angry, and sometimes I start crying. But in none of them do I do what I do now, which is to respond conversationally as if it hasn't been decades since the labyrinth. Hi, Dad. A lifetime since I entered the blue deep, since choking to the surface, treading water and scanning the thudding horizon for whatever rescue by bird or boat I thought would come that did not come. Perhaps it is not surprising that I grew up ordinary, being the son of a great genius, a once rash, once lad who dared everything to feel fire, to be exceptional, to reach the sun, to see what fish flickered beneath the dark surface. And he begins in the middle of a sentence, just like he always did, talking about the virus and grocery delivery and what's happening with my cousin's youngest son who has decided to drop out of college and become a DJ. And just like that, I feel the vibration of his voice, banishing the old story, denying all of my anger and sadness of the decades since I somehow swam through the night to distant rocks, weeping through my salt raw throat. And so what is there to say? I ask him what he shopped for. And he says, they don't have Weetabix, and he drinks almond milk now. And the life where I flew away from him and he let me go just winks out, and a new life starts unraveling in its place. For us, there is no epic end. No father begging the king of the underworld to return the lost son. No father casting himself grief-stricken into the sea. And for just one moment, I think to myself, he always did invent the most exquisite prisons. But then I think, or this is what we can bear. This is the price we're willing to pay. And he asks me, are the cucumbers organic? And I ask him if he knows they have vegan cheese now. And he asks me, did I get those delicious rice crackers or the plain saltines?
Thank you.